himself at his mentor's house in Seoul. He could not teach at the Jeju University. This is a picture when the Taranshi cave was discovered, and this is the picture of Professor Conf. And when he was intimidated, he was lean. Yeah. And it's hard to discover the entrance of Taranshi cave these days. And I went there with a woman who was one of the people who found this cave in 1992, Miss Kim Eun-hee. And fourth, for the last decade, Professor Ko has advocated the worldwide Peace Island networking plan and held many events related to this. And for the last several years, I joined his summer school, and that's becoming a main global education program at my university. And Jeju is now the precious place to learn about past injustice, including Japanese colonization, and to think about reconciliation or restorative justice and the world peace in East Asia for Japanese youngsters. Already 60 or 70 students experienced the collaborative learning project. I'll show you a lot of pictures also. Please get relaxed. And we of course did a field trip to mass killing place, and we also visited the house of woman who lost her jaw by Jeju tragedy. And this is a picture of ceremony in front of the Jeju Memorial Hall. And we also had a meeting with the victims' families at the building of Jeju Museum. And this is a picture about Jeju University Summer Seminar. So next, I talk about the overview of the Jeju mass killing, but due to time limitation, I have to skip. As reparation scholars, let's think about the reparations, Jeju reparations. Oh, this is the picture exhibit of Iroborima, the forgotten village. There are about 88 villages that disappeared by the fire on purpose. And this is the picture of Jeju Airport. But few travelers. There are so many travelers there. There are resort places like Hokkaido, and but few people know that lots of remains had been excavated through 2000s. And this is the exhibits of an excavation site at the Jeju Airport and remains of the victims. So, Jeju reparations. Such horrendous just mass killing had long been a taboo topic under the dictator government since 1961. However, as many of you know, the President Roh Moo-hyun paid a visit to Jeju for the first time to make a sincere apology in 2003. After a special statute for the truth finding and the recovery of victims of the episode massacre was made in 1999. The report of the truth finding was publicized simultaneously in 2003, and due to the efforts of Eric Yamamoto, the English version of this official report was publicized in 2013. The beautiful Peace Park, the inspiring memorial, as well as informative April 3rd Museum have been established afterwards as part of reparations. So this is the official report, and this is the April 3rd Memorial Museum and Memorial Hall. And the third person from the right is the Professor Eric Yamamoto. I showed him around Jeju for his first time, and he, as an expert of the reparations issues, so surprised to realize the tragedy, and he felt obligated to do something. And this is the huge victims' tombs behind the Memorial Hall, as many of you know. However, the problem remains. The monetary compensation is still limited. The left-wing victims still can't get any reparations because of their allegedly reproachable status as a core group of communist guerrillas that instigated the April 3rd revolt, regardless of how miserably they were slaughtered. Third, the U.S. secondary responsibility, as many of you mentioned, has not been discussed legally in depth yet, despite the fact that they also played a very important role for this genocide. Unlike the San Francisco Peace Treaty in 1951 that has exempted the U.S. from legal responsibility with regard to Japan and Japanese citizens, the U.S.-Korea SOFA agreement in 1966 that promulgates the 1954 Mutual Defense Treaty states that the U.S. takes 3/4 of the American responsibility. But the Jeju tragedy occurred before SOFA, and there are abundant proof of the U.S. backing towards the Jeju tragedy. So the SOFA doesn't apply to Jeju massacre. And the U.S. should take full responsibility in relation to the exculpatory clause of the international treaty, even though there might be other hurdles such as statutes of limitation and state immunity. So the Jeju reparations are still an unfinished business, but they are moving in the right directions, unlike the situation in Japan. So this is a picture about Nam Hyun's apology. And this is a picture when President Moon Jae-in attended the ceremony this month. And in the latter half of my paper, I discuss the various types of reparations. The first, legal reparations and moral reparations. As you might know, as for the legal reparation, there are a lot of hurdles such as the lack of evidence, legal principles related to the passage of time such as prescription or limitation of action, and state immunity doctrine, or the waiver clause in the international treaties. So in that sense, we should realize that the legal reparations are partial and sometimes contingent upon many accidental factors. And the legal reparations, even if they are important, are not panacea for the past tragedies and not the only solution for reconciliation. And I discussed the relationship between them. I have to skip. If you conceive the notion of reparation broadly, it includes a lot of things such as history, education, construction of memorial, symbolic actions of apology, return of remains to relatives, rituals for tragedies and genocides. But still, legal scholars as well as legal practitioners are overwhelmed by the monetary compensation centrism. And educational function of reparations, litigation still play an important role. And this is the picture. Okay, I have to, he's famous, right? And secondly, this is the comparison of legal and moral reparations. Moral reparations is foundational, holistic. Secondly, the second type of taxonomy is symbolic reparations and economic reparation. And as conclusion, that I think as for the Jeju victims, the sufferers, they need both, depending on the situation. And third, I talked about the group reparations versus individual reparations. Professor Robert Westby at Tulane Law School argued the merit of group reparations and trust funds in slavery cases. And this idea can be applied to Jeju cases as well as to indigenous Ainu cases. Okay. And this is the process, theoretical framework of the process of reconciliation that corresponds with Eric Yamamoto's 4R, as I explained. And this is a bad example of the conflict winner agreement. Okay. Thank you. So, maybe, yeah, as discussion time, we have.
Right, so Donald Kirk will provide a discussion for us. And I just want to remind us, Professor Yoshida is talking about all these different kinds of reparations. And I just want to draw attention to the fact that the grandfathers who are here asked for something very specific that wasn't mentioned in this list, and that's for their good names to be cleared and that these legal cases be annulled. And I think that's a really, really important addition to the list, and I think it's poignant that that is their last wish, that case is extinguished. And I just wanted to add that, and now we will have Donald Kirk lead a discussion.
Well, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I appreciated all these comments. It's sort of wrapping up, almost wrapping up, not quite, a rather long day. Professor McCall, you're such an experienced lecturer. You managed to wrap in humor, good humor, your serious remarks. I personally would like very much to go on one of these peace cruises that you recommend.
That's number 3.
I think that's a great idea. And what's more, it's not such a fantasy. It could happen. Jeju is a peace island. There is a base down there, which is quite controversial. Naval base, Republic of Korea naval base, also a base for cruises. Half the base is dedicated to cruise ships. They're hoping for huge cruise ships from China. Because of THAAD, China has sort of cut down on group tours. THAAD, Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, I guess most of you know that counter missile battery, which is about 200 miles, I guess, south of Seoul. Also controversial. China cut off all these group tours from which Korea was making a lot of money, and a whole lot of tourists were going to Jeju on group tours. They're hoping for huge Chinese cruise ships to come into Jeju as well. And so it's not at all out of the question that there should be peace cruises as well from the port on the southern coast. And I would hope that can really happen someday. He mentions the possibility of Jeju getting a Nobel Peace Prize. I'm not sure it's going to happen next year or the year after, but it's the kind of It's the kind of place, a peace island, with dedication to the cause of peace, with peace cruises and other events going on, that it could be eligible for a nomination for a Peace Prize. So, Professor McCall, it's possible to take your remarks with a certain humor, but there's also a certain seriousness beneath them, which I think is very interesting. Professor Yoshida, I think one of the more interesting aspects of your talk, I should say, was your comment about Professor Chgo's earlier difficulties on Jeju. Professor Chgo, in his remarks, suggested that we take lessons from Jeju and consider the tasks that lay ahead in bringing about revelation or a concern or awareness of what's going on in Jeju. One of the big problems about Jeju is that, frankly, the international public, including certainly the American public, and also to an extent, believe it or not, the Korean public, is just not aware of what goes on there. There's an awful lot of publicity about Gwangju, which deserves publicity. The 1980 events in Gwangju in May of 1980. More than 200 people were killed in Gwangju, which is, more than 200 people who should have been killed, and it was a very tragic episode. But we're talking about Jeju, where 30,000 or so were killed. A far greater episode, but probably not getting as much publicity as Gwangju. I should also point out that the comfort woman issue in in Korea, the issue of Japanese comfort women, is a far greater matter in the Korean media than Jeju. I'm not saying that Jeju is overlooked or, totally forgotten by the media. Certainly in this anniversary year, there's been quite a lot of publicity about Jeju, 70th anniversary, etc. But the comfort women issue gets publicity day in and day out in the Korean media. There's a statue of a comfort woman outside the Japanese embassy in Seoul. I may have missed something, but I don't know of any statues regarding Jeju in Seoul. Certainly there's this peace park in Jeju, which is a very important institution, which everybody who goes to Jeju should visit. Perhaps I should say everybody should visit. I can guarantee you that only a small percentage of the tourists in Jeju actually go to that peace park, even though it should be a part of every tour. I've even known people who are quite concerned about the Jeju massacre who never go to that peace park. Oh, I was too busy looking at caves or climbing up Mount Hala or looking at all the other looking at the waterfalls and the beaches, and the peace park seemed a little out of the way. Everybody should go to the peace park. All of you, if you haven't been there, those of you who have not been there, should definitely go to the peace park. Professor Yoshida made a great deal of argument in favor of reparations that are owed to Jeju. He mentioned the U.S. secondary responsibility has not been discussed exactly in depth. Actually, it has been discussed in the sense that the Americans don't take responsibility. If there's any discussion on the American side, it's that we only had a few advisors there. We don't know what was going on. We certainly didn't order it. It was, they can say, well, the U.S. military government was in control until August 15th, 1948, and even after that, the U.S. had operational responsibility, operational OPCON over the Korean Armed Forces and the police. But nonetheless, the U.S. really does not accept responsibility for what happened in Jeju. He says, Professor Yoshida says the U.S. should take full responsibility, though there might be other hurdles. Well, there are quite a few other hurdles, one problem is that it's very difficult to prove, thank you very much, it's very difficult to prove these charges against Americans. It's all very well to say it was a U.S. military government, or it was a few Americans were there, or they had to have done this, or they should have done this, or they probably did not done this. But there's no documentary evidence for the Americans giving orders. In fact, I think the American guilt really lies in their standing aside and letting their Korean friends do whatever they wanted. It wasn't a question of the Americans telling the Koreans what to do. It was a question of their not stopping the Koreans from doing what the Americans must have observed, which makes the question of reparations very difficult and very problematic. I think probably run out of time. Thank you very much for listening to me, and thank all three of these speakers for your really interesting remarks.
Okay, so we are going to have a 10-minute break, and please eat some carrot cake and mandarin in the back. So we're going to start the next session at 4:15. 4:15, so 10 minutes.
I'll add something. The Holocaust reparation has been performed as moral reparations, as opposed to legal reparations. So, yeah, we can moving forward about this issue.
Yes.
Looking forward to the carrot cake.
And the Mandarin. Mandarin products.
Go eat some carrot cake, but please be careful with the knife.
Yes. You know what?
I beg your pardon? When I was a kid, I used to read now I do too much, right? No, I didn't. I told you I wanted to go to your first group. That's right. You're opening Japan Japanese culture. I'm not at all. I never heard of Woodrow Wilson. You're kidding.